off, Jesse, I do want to talk about one topic I did cover yesterday. And
Okay.
that's Julio Jones. I think this is one of the more fascinating pieces of the offseason, not just for the 49ers, quite frankly, but for the entire NFL. I don't understand all these people who seem to be, I don't want to say down on Julio Jones, but he's Julio freaking Jones. He's a Hall of Famer. I was reading off these stats to Grant yesterday. He's the all-time leader in yards per game at 95 yards. In second place is Calvin Johnson at 86 yards. The really crazy stat that I didn't get to cover with him yesterday, I want to make sure I touch on, career leader in yards per touch at 15 yards per touch. That's a wild stat about Julio Jones. Go look up the career leaders. That's a fun thing to do. But with Julio Jones, first off, we need to address this. If you're going to be trading for him, it's going to be a post-June 1 trade. We already know that. And what it looks like it'll be is it'll be a 3-year, $38 million deal for whichever team is acquiring him. And in the first year of that deal, it's going to be $15 million. And then it de-escalates downwards from there, and it's 11 for the next 2 years. So first off, Jesse, should the 49ers trade for Julio Jones?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they can't decide that, right? The Falcons have got to be a willing partner, but I think they've got to at least look into it. You know, when the rumors first started, I said no, absolutely not. And so I can play both sides of the argument, and I'll tell you where I was at and why I've changed my mind. So initially, I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna have to give up minimum a second round pick. I'm looking at that secondary right now and saying everybody is 30 and older, basically. They're all on 1-year deals. Let's assume that Ambry Thomas and or Lenore do not pan out, which, by the way, it's a very high possibility. I mean, we're talking about 2 late round picks. Let's not act like this is a for sure thing that either one of them work out. So if and when that happens, now you don't have any draft picks to go back and rebuild that secondary. You've got a lot of money invested in the players that you have. Sure, the cap's going to go up. Sure, Jimmy won't be on there. But you've got to assume that players want to come to you, and you don't even know who the free agents are going to be. So it puts you in a tough position when you want to go and rebuild a whole secondary on the fly. Okay. So that was problem number 1. Problem number 2 is I was under the impression that next year he was making $19 million. And depending on how you look at it, it's very easy to figure that out and say, yeah, that's what he's making. But, you know, I talked with Jack Hammer, who's definitely better at the cap than I am. And he broke down why it was like 11.3. And so I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, now I'm fully in, because 11.3 is very different than 19, right? That's a whole nother player we can get.
Oh, yeah. That's the difference between the top paid wide receiver and a mid-tier wide receiver. I mean, listen, if you're getting Julio Jones at that kind of price, I think it's a no-brainer, quite frankly. And if you look at the cap situation or the contract situation with Julio Jones, after this year, you can actually get away with just having him off the team for a $2 million penalty. So with him, there's so much financial flexibility beyond this year, right? So I'm not against it in that sense. And I'll let you go in a sec here, Jesse, but I think my main problem with this, and honestly, the reason I'm going to end up saying no, even though I don't want to, is because it would be so tough to fit him under the salary cap this year. And he would be the last player you would be adding to your roster. You would say, that's it. And for me, I'm not at that place yet with the 49ers. I still think there's a lot of depth issues with this team.
Yeah, I can't argue that for sure. I guess the way that I see it is, and I've heard a lot of arguments. Well, how are we going to distribute the ball? That's not my problem. You know, let Shanahan figure that out. And honestly, I don't care if somebody only gets 40 catches this year. If it means we're winning games, I don't care. It might not be the worst thing, by the way, if Debo turns into your third wide receiver, is able to rest a little bit, stay healthy. And by the way, it's hard to command a lot of money when you come up for free agency when you're catching 35, 40 balls a season. So that's not the worst thing in the world, okay? But the way I see it is you just laid out all of these amazing statistics with Julio, okay? We're talking about, at worst, a top 10 receiver of all time, arguably top 5 of all time, who is 32. Yes, that's a little bit older, but we've seen players be productive at 32, 33, 34. So the way that I see it is, if you can add a talent like that, you've at least got to kick the tires on it. Now, do I think it's going to happen? No, probably not. I also, by the way, do not buy that first round picks are on the line for him. I do not believe that rumor. Sure, the Falcons may be talking about it, but that doesn't mean the team is offering it. Those are two different things.
So that's the thing. People love to play these little media games, and I was talking about this with Grant yesterday. Diana Rossini was the one who reported that the Falcons got offered a first-round pick from a single team. So I don't want to dispel that rumor because she is legit as it gets, and I'm sure she has good information. But quite frankly, with Julio Jones, if they could have got a first-round pick for him, they would have already made that happen even pre-June 1. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I think I want to touch on this from a football perspective. You just talked about this. Julio Jones would be incredible in this offense. He would allow the other receivers to have better roles that they can fit into and put them in less positions to get hurt. And that's the problem with this 49ers team right now. And just in these last few years, this team gets hurt all the time. So with a guy like Julio Jones, you can put him at that X receiver spot, right? You can move Brandon Ayuk to the same side as Kittle, and you can put Deebo down in the slot like you're talking about, and he can be more of that gadget guy. So yeah, absolutely. I'm all for it from the football perspective, but logistically, that's where I have the issue. And I think the main thing with Julio, and it would just be too much, I think, for the 49ers cap. And if they were to have one injury in between June 1st and week 1, they wouldn't be able to make any changes significantly to their roster. So that's ultimately why I came to the opinion I did. I mean, like I said, I love Julio Jones. I would love to have him on this team. Heck, I would get a Julio Jones jersey. I'm saying it right now. You can get this on record. I love Julio Jones. I just don't think it's going to happen. And let's be honest, Jesse, they're going to be competing with AFC teams. And the Falcons are going to want to trade him to an AFC team. And if the 49ers have a competing offer, they're not going to win that trade.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no reason to keep him in the NFC. Send him to the AFC, Titans, Patriots, whoever, Colts, I don't know, but whoever it is, get them over the AFC. If the offer is even similar, that's a no-brainer for them.
Absolutely.